Liberty Police Incorporated is the peacekeeping force of the Liberty Nation. These mighty pilots and brave peacekeepers patrol the inner systems of the Liberty Nation, namely New York, Colorado, California and Texas, to keep the inhabitants safe from pirate attacks as good as possible. But are they Liberty policemen really that brave? Are they really the knights in shining armor of the nation? Or are they just as corrupt as any organization could be? We'll be taking an in-depth look on the Liberty Police Force, meaning their battle hardiness, their capabilities, their equipment, their friends and foes, and of course if they are really as trustworthy as they should be. We'll be comparing them later on as well to the police forces of the other nations, meaning Bretonia, Kuzari and Rhineland. First though, the Liberty Police usually patrols in groups of 3 to 4 fighters, the Patriot. Their pilot levels go from 2 to 4, 2 being the officer, 3 the sergeant and 4 the inspector. There are no differences in loadout between the 3 level groups and no difference in ship capabilities. Occasionally there's also the police armored transport equipped with Justice Mark III turrets, Justice Mark II Class 3 turrets, escorted by 2 pilots in the Patriot. However, those are not really worth mentioning, so let's have a look at what the Liberty Police has to offer. The Patriot. It is the ship of the Liberty Police Force and it is a streamlined, rather efficient and sleek design, built for maneuverability and speed. So, this ship comes at a rather cheap 7,600 credits. It mounts 4 guns, 1,300 points of armor, a cargo of comfortable 25 units with 12 maximum shield batteries and nanobots. The optimal weapon class for this ship is Class 2, the maximum class this ship can carry is 3. It also comes with additional equipment in form of a mine dropper, a countermeasure dropper and a cruise disruptor. Now, to the left you can see the usual equipment a Liberty Police fighter comes with. They're equipped with 3 Justice Mark II guns, weapon class 2, and 1 slingshot missile, weapon class 3. For utility, they also have a countermeasure dropper on board. For defense and additional equipment, they use an advanced sentry graviton shield, class 2, and a normal thruster. Now though, let us go into a little bit more detail. The Justice Mark II is a class 2 weapon of the Liberty Force. It costs 860 credits, is thus rather cheap. It is a weapon class 2 with 20 hull damage per shot and 10 points of shield damage per shot, on a range of 600 meters and a projectile speed of 750 meters per second. They also fire 8.33 shots per second with an energy usage of 6. Now, if we do the math, that means that the Justice Mark II deals 166 shots points of damage on the hull per second and 83.3 shots points of damage on the shield per second. If we multiply that with the amount of weapons, we have 498 points of hull damage per second and 249.9 shield damage per second. With the slingshot missile, definitely the most powerful piece of equipment on this fighter, it is a class 3 missile for the cost of 2,740 credits, weapon class 3 with 747 points of hull damage and 373 points of shield damage per shot. It also has a range of 1000 meters, a projectile speed of 90 meters per second, a refire rate of 1 shot every 2 seconds, which gives us pretty much an easy math. The DPS in this case is half the damage on hull and shield, namely 373.5 points of hull damage and 186.75 points of shield damage. This means the Patriot can pack quite a punch, at least for these levels. Now, what about the defense? The Advanced Sentry Graviton Shield for light fighters costs 1,720 credits. Obviously, as I mentioned before, it is a Class 2 fighter shield with a shield capacity of 821, a shield regeneration rate of 18 points per second, and the regeneration power drain is equal to all ships 10. This is not noteworthy since it is not noticeable at all. Now though, we have an issue. You see, the two pictures down below give us the impression that they have less shield than they should have. This is also a common trend, so I'll be mentioning it, but in this case I'll go onto it specifically. We lose about 123 points of shield for no reason at all. I don't see why, I don't know any reason, but every NPC seems to have less shield than the shield should have. I will compare the values on how much at a later date. Just so know that this is a fact, it seems. Now, let us have a look at what the Liberty Police Incorporated has actually to face in their day-to-day business. They mostly deal with the Liberty Rogues, since they're the most common pirate group within Liberty. They also have to deal with the Xenos, with the hackers, and the outcasts. This is gonna be interesting when I check out every single faction of those eventually, and then I shall give you an information on how they deal with the benefiting law enforcement group, since all of these are a bit more spread out and a little bit more let's just say they have more contact points than just the Liberty Police, so it wouldn't be fair to compare them right here, right now. And now for comparison, the allies of the Liberty Police. They go with the Liberty Security Force, which we never see in game, aside of Junie, King, and a handful of mission NPCs. Then the Liberty Navy, definitely the strong arm of the Liberty Nation. And, of course, Liberty corporations, like Deep Space Engineering, Interspace Commands is also, I think, based in Liberty, and a handful of others. I'll be going into those factions eventually as well. Now, let's get to a few more general informations. The Liberty Police controls the following bases and planets. Planet Manhattan in the New York system, which is the headquarter. Planet Los Angeles in the California system. Planet Denver in Colorado, and Planet Houston in Texas. They also control Fort Bush in the New York system, San Diego Border Station in the California system, LPI Huntsville and LPI Sugarland. Both prisons are in the Texas system. Then we have a few interesting rumors. Let's dive into them, shall we? Lieutenant Nathan Green on Planet Houston says, "A lot of the original LPI employees were police that had worked for the state. When the police went private, the pay decreased, so we had to make up for the shortfall, if you know what I mean. Fortunately, we have a little more latitude than we did as employees of the government." Detective Kevin Pay on Planet Manhattan says, "LPI is almost like two companies. You got the LPI that police Liberty Space and run the Huntsville and Sugarland prison ships, and then you have LPI, the consumer good manufacturer, making all kinds of products using captured criminals as their labor force." From Detective Kim Bailey on Manhattan we get, "LPI is a privatized Police Force. I am an employee of Liberty Police Incorporated. We're actually just executing company policy when we patrol Liberty space looking for criminals. LPI is sanctioned by the Liberty government, so we have legal jurisdiction, but the bottom line is about money. Spicy, spicy. The Manhattan bartender, Bob Swaffer, says the rogues are all over New York. Actually, LPI might be out of business if it wasn't for the rogues. It doesn't matter too much though. Some LPI will bring you in for nothing but being in the wrong place at the wrong time. LPI can always use more workers at Sugarland and Huntsville. Sergeant Conrad Gennarly from the LPI says, even though the name of our company uses the word police in its title, I am more of a factory manager than a law enforcement officer. I'm more concerned with squeezing all the production I can out of the miscreant workers here. Usually, they are more inspired to work if I hold back their food rations for a day or two. That always helps boost productivity. On Fort Bush, Sergeant Heather Fields tells us, if we didn't need labor for our consumer good facilities, I'd kill all the rogues I came across. I just get tired of putting away the same scum and watching them get released a couple years later to start doing the same illegal activity. Planet Houston houses Sergeant Mary Gruska. If it wasn't for LPI, Liberty Police Incorporated, Liberty would have been bankrupted by the sheer cost of housing all her prisoners. But they were smart enough to privatize the Department of Corrections, and that is how we were formed. Back to Fort Bush, Lieutenant Louis Stilwell. Sure, there's a lot of piracy out there, but LPY is hindered in ways that the bounty hunters are not. We have well-defined patrol area boundaries and company policy that prohibits us from killing outlaws. We are to capture them if possible for rehabilitation at our factories. Captain Joan Nicholson on Planet Manhattan tells us, the Junkers are criminal dirtbags, but they are smart about it, unlike the rogues. They have a legitimate cover as scrap collectors, but we know they are as crooked as any other criminal. And they will never give up one of their own. You squeeze a junker to make him talk about other criminals. Detective Kim Bailey, Liberty Police Force, Planet Manhattan, tells us, the Xenos don't usually mess with Liberty shipping, but that all changes when it comes to sidearms. The Xenos love stealing guns. They've been concentrating attacks on the Detroit munition plant for some time now. Agera is guarding the plant better, so now they're focusing on the trade lane between here and Detroit. Bartender Joel Rosenblatt on Fort Bush. The Xenos sometimes hit the Detroit train lanes, mostly after foreigners. We never bring them in, cause if you send one Xeno to Texas, 3 come back out. Best to just vaporize them on the spot. And, last but not least, Detective Kevin Key, Planet Manhattan. One of the rogues we just arrested just spilled his guts. This guy and 2 of his wingmen had traveled from the Badlands all the way around Liberty Space, following the debris fields, till he reached the Baltimore shipyards. They flew right into one of our patrols and got tagged on their final approach to Baltimore. So, at the end of the day, where does that leave us? Well, Liberty Police Force is certainly not the knight in shining armor like they should be. They're mostly just a capitalistic organization, bringing in more workers into the prison by, well, sometimes arresting people for basically nothing. Not that nice, is it? Combat rating is decent enough for Liberty, but we'll have a whole Liberty ranking and matchup situation once I'm done with every faction individually. Then we shall pit them against each other and see where it goes. So, this was the Liberty Police Incorporated. I hope you enjoyed what I had for you today. And of course, if you have feedback, I'll gladly take it, throw it my way, and we'll see what I can do to better this format. I also hope that you'll be staying tuned for more of this little format, since I intend to do this for every faction in the entire game. Oh, and trust me, Liberty Police was the most boring one. Just you wait until we get to all the big-time criminals, for example. But until then, stay tuned, stay healthy, and I shall see you in the next video.